I've been liking Waterlox. I've been using it all winter. I like it better. I used to lacquer everything, and now I Waterlox everything.
John, have you used the stop loss bags at all?
Yes, that's what I use. They work very well. Once you learn how to fill them without spilling a quart of fluid all over the workbench, ask me how I know that.
I made a fitting.
I convinced Waterlox to bring it out in 2-ounce bottles.
That's a great plan.
And I think you can buy 8 or 12 through Woodcraft now. And it's more expensive than buying it quarts, but in waste, it's cheaper.
Yeah, as we were just saying while you were off, the stop loss bags system works very well also.
That's I just got some of them. I'm going to try those.
Yeah, well, okay. From the grins I saw on the screen, other guys have had the same experience I had. That in learning how to fill the damn bags, I did spill about a half a quart of finish one afternoon. It's a matter of the right funnel held in the right way, and as Barry says, you can make a Dewey to hold the bag up, and I found I figured out my own way of managing it. So.
I got a regular like grocery store white plastic funnel that has the outside diameter at the base of about ½ inch, I guess, and I connect it with about a 2-inch length of this new kind of plumbing that's not PVC. What's that flexible plumbing you use with SharkBite? Yeah. About a 2-inch piece of that, and it just happens that the funnel exactly will jam into it, and it will jam onto the top of the stop loss bag. When you fill, there's no running out the base. You can, if you overfill, it's all in the funnel. When you're all done, hold it by the neck when you take it out, so it's all suspended there, and screw the cap on, and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. They give you a funnel or sell you a funnel that exactly fits over the top of a round can, and I kind of thought that was secure, but it isn't.
It bugs me that they charge separately for the filling adapter and the funnel instead of throwing it in with the 4 bags.
Yeah, and then you got to buy caps if you want extra caps because the caps gum up. I bought a bag of caps too.
Yeah,
it's all a la carte.
Good morning, Jim.
While I'm using the stop loss, I put the cap in a little 1-ounce container of lacquer thinner, and it dissolves any built up residue from the Waterlox, so it goes back on clean each time, and I can wipe the neck of I keep it pretty clean, so because it can quickly become a mess, like the lid of a paint can.
Yeah, well, I always pour out a little into a dish, wooden dish anyhow, and then put the lid right back on immediately.
What are you guys pouring?
Waterlox.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, stop loss bags.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking of making some kind of wooden stand with like 2 fingers on it that I could slip that neck into, and then it would be hanging, sort of just barely sitting on the table.
The package comes with the drawing of how to make that.
All right.
Which I did not do.
The bag will stand up, but the top part flops over.
Yeah.
And ½ an ounce of Waterlox runs out of the spout when it falls over.
But it does keep the stuff. The system works. I mean, I have got Waterlox here that I put in those bags damn near a year ago, and it's just fine.
How good those would have been in darkroom days.
Yeah.
Well, Ernie, we're going to be starting a tips and tweaks kind of session in our monthly club meetings. If you want to make one of those stop loss bag holders, you can go ahead and submit it as a tip for a week and a half from now.
A tweak for a week and a half from now. All right.
Well, for the monthly meeting, if you send any pictures or description, whatever, to Doug, he can include it in after the show and tell. We're going to add, if anybody has any. If nobody has any, then fine. But if you have a kind of like a woodworking magazine, tips and tricks and new tools and stuff like that,
Barry, I think we ought to treat that the same as we're treating the challenge and make a feature out of it, and you ought to be the MC for it and basically run it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I was just,
Says the otherwise would be MC.
I was just telling my wife last night, the most interesting part of all the wood magazines I get is the tips and tricks section. I'm fascinated with them.
People love books of shop tips. They can't resist them.
I forget which magazine. You find a strange tool from the past and you send it to they have a name for it, challenge, some kind of challenges column.
I forget who does that.
Yeah,
It's in the Lancaster newspaper does it.
No, there's a wood magazine that does it because I
Well,
sent.
EIA, Early American Industries Association, is all about that, and they're based up in Doylestown.
Yes, they have a great museum there, don't they?
Oh man, what a place!
I sent in, my son-in-law's father passed away, and we cleaned out his shop one Saturday, and we found a tool. We didn't know what it was. I mean, it was a strange hammer with hooks and claws on it. And so I sent it to the challenges. They made a whole big column out of it. We had great fun. It turned out to be a slate roof hammer that people use to do slate roof work.
Have you ever seen a Massachusetts universal fire hydrant opening wrench?
No.
That's a casting you will never figure out. It's a single tool that'll open every fire hydrant in use in Massachusetts. Or did back in the day.
Somebody had too much time on their hands.
You know,
Hey, Jim, our local newspaper has a weekly, can you name this tool thing from, there's a farm museum here in Lancaster County, Landis Valley Farm Museum.
Yeah.
And it's full of tools, and then people can submit tools, and each week there's a, what last week's was the best guesses and the winners, and then this week's tools. Some pretty arcane tools in there.
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
As a kid growing up, I didn't know what a whole tool was. My dad's toolbox was full of tools that he salvaged from the shop or the quarry where he worked. And they would have box end wrenches with just a short nub on one.
Yeah, right.
I still have them. When he
Short
cleaned
screw.
out to move to retirement, I put them in a box in my shop. I gave some to my son, but it was great fun. Dad did well with all those tools.
Here's one. I've got a stumper for you right here.
Oh,
So I'm pulling out this out of the handle. And then this drops down in there. Oops, wrong way. Drops down in there and locks in place. And there's the end of it. And then this goes through it like that.
I know what that is.
that's an auger that's like drilling a hole through a railroad tie or something.
No, it's for getting a core out of a tree. It's a forester's tool.
Yep. You can drill this. It'll walk right into a tree. And then you stuff this in.
And you pull out the core, and you can count the rings without felling the tree.
Yep. Tell it when it had good years and bad years and all kinds of interesting stuff.
What's that called? And I always thought of it as a forester's auger, but I don't know what it's actually called.
No, this one is made by Mora in Sweden. A friend of mine who had a doctorate from Yale in forestry always carried one when we were out and around. And I had a student come in, and it was laying in his toolbox. He didn't even know what it was for. And I says, "What do you want for that? I'll pay you anything you want." And he took me up on my challenge.
Good for him and good for you.
Well, I kept my original brace and bit, and I drug it out recently, and some of my younger brothers didn't even know what the heck it was. And then the latest issue of Wooden Boat magazine has a whole big article about, it's called a cordless marble. And I forgot all the things you could do with bit and brace put in it.
Yeah.
It's an awesome tool.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine, Jan Atkins, does all the illustration for Wooden Boat.
Does he really?
Oh,
What's his name? He may have done these.
Pretty sure he did.
Jan Atkins. Yep. That's
Dan
it.
Henkins, yeah. I didn't know he was still alive.
Oh, yeah, he's in Florida. As crazy as ever.
He did a lot of good little books back in the day too.
Oh my God, he is a genius. He stayed at the house many times. He did all of our original catalogs.
Oh, okay. No wonder you had good drawings.
Yeah, the other crazy tool that I still have a couple of, when I started in the cabinet shop after high school, we had Yankee drivers.
Oh yeah.
You guys know a Yankee driver. I had the big monster and I had a little one. And in those days, OSHA didn't make us take the springs out. We could still go like that, but now they made you eventually take the spring out. You had to hold it to do that. I guess it was just, look at them. Mine are out in the shop.
I'm sorry, what's a Yankee driver?
Right
Fire
there.
screwdriver.
Oh, those things. Okay. I never heard it called that.
It's a Yankee ratchet quick return screwdriver.
Okay. Yeah, I got some. I just didn't know it was called that.
When I was a little kid, on my grandfather's advice, I got my grandfather one of those for Christmas.
I had the bits and everything. I think I still got some out there. I kept them next to the brace. So.
Yeah, we got batteries now.
I was going to say electricity works really well, to be honest.
Yeah.
The original spiral ratchet screwdriver was invented by the original patent was by the Decatur Coffin Company.
And that's exactly where you'd use them.
They only went clockwise. They did not go counterclockwise. They didn't figure out the technology. And the joke was you only put screws in a coffin. But it's very interesting how it works. If you push the spiral down, it turns the bit clockwise.
Look at what Ted Luttrell is holding up. You got
This obviously isn't as old as what you guys are talking about. And but I still keep it.
It's that era. It's that era, Ted. Yeah.
Hey, John.
Yo.
Let's propose the challenge for next week, and that is everybody to pull out their oldest wood turning tool in their box.
Oldest or strangest or
whatever.
Most storied. What's the most special tool you got?
And your wood. This is wood turning, not just
any old, but wood turning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wood turning.
Your most special favorite wood turning tool, old or new?
Okay. With the brace, you never have to run back to the shop for another battery.
Well, yeah, I know.
You do. It's called beer.
Yeah, good point.
Say, and then you have to go to the chiropractor to get your shoulder fixed.
Yeah. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, this is it's 10 o'clock, March 18th. This is Woodturners Coffee Hour number 49. In the series we began last April and have not missed a Thursday ever since. I'm amazed and pleased to say. We're typically drawing 35, 36 people, and then they're still clicking in. I'm downstairs on my laptop because I might manage to sustain the courage to do an actual live demo, although I think we got a lot of stuff to fill the hour without it. We got a new guy on today from Long Island, Jim Maloney from Long Island. Give us a wave, Jim.
I'm here.
Tell us where you're from, please.
Long Island, New York. I belong to two clubs here. One is a woodworking club, and we have a special interest group for turners. And I also belong to another turning club, a standalone club. And a couple months ago, we had Ernie Conover do a demo for us.
Well, you're going to get some more of Ernie this morning. Who else?
So Jim, I don't understand. You don't have that Long Island accent like my wife.
It's not necessarily baked in. Somebody over there whose picture is named iPad. I don't know who that is. If you can hear me, change your name. I see Mike Peace is on today. Good to see you, Mike. You got a break in the tax season, did you?
For one day.
Well, okay. The little agenda I have so far this morning is Bruce Lamb kicked us off last week with a chat about his Trent Bosch hollowing rig, and that led me to ask Ernie if he could give us a survey of the market on hollowing rigs, which he's ready to do. So we're going to open with that. Jim Bowman has a little video. Doug Reeser has a little video. Charlie Felsen sent some pictures in. Alan Miller has some pictures to show. Who am I missing? Who else would be? If you have something you want to show, wave your hand, and I'll put you on a list that we'll either get to this week or next. Roy Johnson, Jeff Carroll. Okay. as usual, we'll go through whatever we do, and what we don't get to this week, we'll get to next week. As a quick report, as some of you know, I've been started on my baluster turning project. I'm about halfway through it. I've made 50. I'll probably have to make about 120 by the time I'm done. I'm near the end of the first batch of wood that I milled, and I've got the rest here to mill up, which I'll do later today. And if you guys all don't fill the hour, and if I still feel courageous enough to try it live, I'll do a little demo of where I'm at with getting quickly to the spindle. I started at 25 minutes per, and I'm now down to about 12. And I think if I was doing it all day long, I'd get down to 5 or 6. On that note, Ernie, you want to give us I'm going to put the spotlight on you, and let's get our little rundown on those hollowing rigs. I found that pretty interesting last week. You have to unmute yourself.
And I'm going to share a screen here.
Go for it.
All right. When I redid the third edition of the lathe book, it hadn't been redone in 10 years. Hollowing rigs didn't really exist when I wrote the second edition. They might have been around, but they were such a fragment of the thing that we didn't see it worth covering. So, but in the third edition, it was very well worth covering. And of course, I have a one-way 2436, which I actually bought used. But at any rate, we wanted to showcase the one-way one because I had that. And I would say this is an example of the high end of what I call a turner's gate. And they basically, as you can see in the foreground here, that the holder for the boring bar has a big arm coming out of it that you trap between the top and bottom rails of this gate. You can adjust all of that on both sides. And once you get this in place, this boring bar cannot turn. You then adjust everything to that cutting edge of the tool is on what you'd call the center line of the lathe, the center line being an imaginary plane that would run between the center of the headstock spindle and the tailstock quill.
So you're basically overpowering the tendency of the tool to grab and run.
Yeah, it cannot do that. And most of these rigs work the best with a rather small cutter. If you take any kind of a scraper that has a radius, one of the things you teach a beginner right away is never to always be scraping a radius that's bigger than the radius of your tool, or you will get too much tool engaged and it will get away from you. Also here you can see that I have on a one-way bowl steady, which you can use for bowls or better for hollow forms. And it only works well on green turning for a little while. As it starts to go out around, it brings more problems than it solves. But for a dry wood hollow form, it actually brings a lot of stability to a tall form like this. There's also the laser rig right here that's shining a laser beam straight down, and you just put your hand under the tool and adjust that till there is the wall thickness you want from the center of the cutting edge. And then as long as the beam is on the piece, you've got a ways to go. The minute it falls away, you've reached the wall thickness. There's a close-up there, and there I am adjusting the beam. You can see the beam shining right here on my index finger, and the cutting edge is right there. And this would be a straight boring bar.
So Ernie, what's a rig like that cost roughly? The whole setup?
I imagine this would be like 600 bucks. They one way sent it down to me for the shots. So I think I priced it out at the time. It's certainly in the book because we put the street prices of all that in there. But You know, again, it's a la carte. There's all 3 boring bars. You can see the other 2 down here. By the time you add all this up, and they have a heavier boring bar too that will do very deep hollowing work.
So you'd get to $1,000 pretty easy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And does that laser pointer setup work well?
It does. It
So
works extremely well. But it is a thing that almost anybody with a little ingenuity could rig up themselves, because you can buy a laser pointer pretty cheap. And the only thing you really need is some kind of a thing that attaches to your boring bar and extends an arm out that you can articulate a bit and get in the right place. And there you can see the laser dot on the piece right there. I'm showing you all the pictures I took for this. You usually take lots of photos and then pick the ones that are right, and you're trying to get a couple of money. This is the other, again, and talking to Daryl Nish out at Craft Supplies and Brad Packard at Packard Woodworks, the most popular of these kind of rigs is made by Carter Products, which originally was famous for bandsaw guides. And many manufacturers actually put Carter guides on their best saws to this day. And if you have a mediocre bandsaw, buying a set of their guides can make it work a lot better. And this is their system, and it has a very nice overhead arm here with a laser in it. The battery actually goes way down here. And it consists of 2 rollers as the gate. And you have to adjust this. It takes a bit of finesse to get it to where it will trap your boring bar. And their boring bars have a flat spot on the bottom, which that's the way they keep them from rolling. And then you have a rest out here, which is a round bar that is their own. And they make adapters for any lathe bed. This is, of course, on a robust Scout, the same as John turns on, which I picked as a really nice lathe for this book because it's American made and best represents a general purpose workshop lathe. Again, we're going for different poses. I'm often holding the tool in a way I would never hold it in reality, but you do anything for the camera, you have to. There's also a lot of strobe on all these pictures. I have 700 and I have a 225 watt seconds of strobe. That really light things up. 3 heads.
Anybody got questions for Ernie so far? I can't see you all, so you just have to holler.
Ernie, this is Doug Reeser. One of the things your pictures are showing, though, is that you really don't have to touch very heavily. The tool is very balanced and pretty much it's almost like a fingertip type of stroke when you're doing. You don't have to have a big grip on the handle or anything like that.
No, in fact, an important part of this kind of work is a sense of feel. You've got to sort of have a safecracker's touch for this kind of work. And if you're trying to resist all the forces on a long boring bar that's just on a rest, it's pretty hard to do.
Well, Moulthrop used to have an 8-foot handle on his boring bar. It was like a harpoon for whaling. For that very reason.
He used to forge those out himself out of an old, like 1.5-inch tap he would put in a forge. And you can't really forge high-speed steel very well, but he managed it. And I was at his shop years ago with Rudy Selnick and I were during the IWF, we're in his shop. And he started up his big lathe and handed us each a harpoon, and I promptly broke the end right off of his.
Ernie, do you need to have both hands on, or can you control it with just your the back part, the blue part?
I think you could handle it. You could handle it. You could handle this with one hand holding only the blue handle. However, I find it much easier to have another hand up in front of it so I can feel the side pressure.
Yeah, I think I agree with Ernie. When I've used one like that, I use the Weil Jameson, but you have to have the side pressure on one hand and the end pressure on the blue hand.
Exactly. And I at the time, this was the most popular rig on the market, according to Daryl Nish and Brad Packard. And at the time, it cost about $350. And it will fit almost any lathe. They have a wide variety of adapters. And so I think you can put it on a MIDI lathe if you want to.
So it's a satisfactory tool to you, is it?
Yes. And so anybody wanting to try this, it's a way to get into this without paying a king's ransom. Any other questions?
You got any others to show?
What was the name of that one?
That's made by Carter Products, who are in Michigan. Again, a U.S.-made piece of gear, and great bunch of people. They make quite a few turning accessories. They make a steady rest too, which I don't like nearly as well as one-way's rest. I think one-way makes the best steady rest.
I can definitely endorse their bandsaw add-ons. It really saved my old Delta.
Yeah.
Weil Jameson also makes a similar type of hollowing tool.
That looks like a really good rig, and I'm probably going to do a third edition of the bowl, or a second edition of the bowl turning book one of these days. And I certainly would try to get that rig in there because it looks to overcome a lot of problems.
Do you have any pictures of that one?
No, I don't. This is it for the pictures.
Okay. Let's end your share.
Have you seen the one that Trent Bosch is putting out? Has anybody got pictures on Trent Bosch's hollowing rig?
We saw that last week. Bruce Lamb.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And Bruce, are you
That's
happy
the
with
one
that rig?
I love it, and I continue to use it. One of the really nice things about the Bosch rig is that once you set the collar on it and you get the height centered, you can pop it on and off, and the next time you use it, there's no center to get. It's already established in a nice, usable way.
What does that rig cost you, or roughly?
Ernie said it right when he said these are all piecemeal. I think when you look at the rig itself, it's like $400. By the time you add the 3 tools, the laser, and you're all done, it's probably more like $900.
Yeah, that's the impression I have in general, that those are, if you want to get into this, that's the range of money you're going to be putting down by the time you're done.
Although,
I would like to add though that if you talk to somebody like you can do hollowing by hand, but the biggest risk you have is with the hand tool as a catch is really hard on your elbow. And so I found that I was doing a lot of hollowing just with a hand tool, and I had to get one of these if I continued on, just because it was costing my elbow too much work as I was aging.
I can hollow down to about 4 inches freehand and about 6 inches if I can get a tool rest in there. And so far that's been all I've wanted to do. But I did have a fantasy about an 8-inch deep hollow at one time, but I couldn't do it by hand.
No.
Trent makes one for what he calls MIDI lathes, and because I have a smaller lathe, I was interested in that.
Yeah.
Cool.
And what's nice is if you get the big one, you get collets to use the smaller tools on it. So it's kind of an all-in-one if you go big first.
the last one that Ernie showed there looks like the price on Rockler's $369.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Is that a complete rig, Mark, or is there more stuff you need to buy, or did you look deep enough?
It doesn't have a laser pointer, but other than that, it looks complete.
I have Packard's catalog from 2020, and it shows the basic roller system a little over $300, but the complete package, whatever that is for about $480.
Huh.
Mike, do you think it's feasible for a guy to make one of these himself?
You can make the back plane very easy. I made one, but frankly, that's one of the cheaper components. If you look at Lyle Jamison's rigs, he's got a very nice welded one, and the back plane is not that expensive. I think you get more in your actual hollowing tools and a little bit on the laser designator and the tips. The carbide, that little Hunter carbide which is very, very nice, is costs some money.
Okay. Any other questions in this or other comments? It's a very interesting area.
One of the things hadn't been shown is that rig where you use a video camera and mark on the screen, where it almost looks like you're looking inside the vessel.
That goes with Trent. That's an extension on Trent Bosch's rig.
Yeah.
He's the one that does that. But his video camera is really quite cool. If you've ever seen him demo it.
Yeah.
Yep,
you
that's
can
a
make one of those
$700
rigs for less than $100, I think.
Well, an even simpler add-on than that I recently saw, and Barry and I were talking about, is a little LED light on the back of your tool rest, just to shine a light in there wherever it is you happen to be working. I think Cindy Drozda has one of those that she's been promoting. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think one thing it might be interesting to point out here is that if you're going to really be serious about this, I would pick a rig that makes sense to you, that you like, you feel you can deal with, fits your lathe well, fits your tool handling well, because they're a little bit like cameras. I mean, I run mostly Canons, and I've got a gaggle of expensive Canon lenses, and I can't change to another camera body because I couldn't afford the expense of the lenses. Yes. So this is the same way. Once you start building this stuff, it's hard to switch system.
Along those lines, I think there's that issue. If you're doing multiple size hollowing forms, it seems like you need a small, medium, and large, and maybe an extra large if you're really doing things, larger than 12 or 15 inches. So like you say, Ernie, I think having a basic system that will accommodate the smaller tools, or for very small hollow forms, like several people point out, you can do it with, without a rig, just needing a hollowing bar. But once you get larger than that, you want something that'll accommodate multiple size bars.
Yeah. The other big difference for me, I have both a Jamison and a Trent Bosch system, and Trent's system takes up a lot less swing space and a lot less space to use on your lathe, because the pivot point and all the connections are very close to the workpiece, as opposed to that large piece out the back. And so I find that it's actually, I haven't used it on really deep pieces, but I find that it just takes a whole lot less space for my shop. I don't need to have as big an area to accommodate that. So if you're in a smaller area, you might think about that too.
This is Alan. I have a question regarding carbide tip sharpness. Someplace along the way, I read that what you typically can find for what's mostly available is meant to be used for machining metal, that you need a different degree of sharpness or hardness for doing wood. Does anybody have any comments or experience with that?
I just wrote an article on carbide inside tools for Rockler's magazine, and you generally tailor the carbide insert for the type of material you're cutting. So wood turning ones would have a different, and it's the mix in the powdered metal consistency of the insert between carbide powder and cold glue that holds it all together, and by doing different toughnesses to the inserts.
Wouldn't the clearance angle be more the clearance angle be more significant than the material?
Well, all of these have about 5 degrees of clearance, but some of the wood turning ones have more. But they're all designed to be used level on the rest. And they're never going to cut as good as a bird dragged by a scraper. But for the average person, or when you're just trying to get rid of material, or you don't really want to don't want to learn how to use conventional tools right, they offer a course. I mean, they are very popular. For a few years, they sold better than conventional tools.
Well, those little cup-shaped ones, they work very well also, and they are very sharp and operate like a hook tool.
And the Easy Wood Tools recently brought out about a year ago negative rake scrapers, and they actually, I did a video of them, which will be up in another month, but they will turn all of your plastic resins much better than a conventional carbide tool, because resin likes negative rake. If you machine brass in a metal lathe, you always put 5 degrees of negative rake on the tool, and it cuts like butter. If you put positive rake, it'll tear the piece out of the chuck.
And so is there a particular place that I should be looking for the carbide inserts for my wood turning?
Well, I am from the
About
wood
the carbide, as I recall, Mike Hunter back years ago was pushing the idea that your metal cutting carbide was different and not as work as well as the finer carbide that he was developing. I think other people have come along with it, and Easy Wood Tools have come out pretty well with some good cutters. I don't have any, but I've tried them. We had a demo over there at Stevens a couple years back, and I was surprised at how well I could cut with the carbide and get nice string shavings off of it. But there's a difference in the material in metal carbide and wood carbide.
I have Mike Hunter's carbide cup tool. It's a very good cutting tool. I don't use it very much, but in some situations, it's just perfect. And the carbide cutter on that is a little wee cup, and the included angle can't be more than 10 or 15 degrees. It's very, very sharp. I think he developed that, and I think Jimmy Clues has developed something very similar that's available on the market now. Mike will not divulge the carbide. That's his trade secret, where he gets it and what its composition is.
Yeah. Well, the same with Easy Wood Tools. This is Easy Wood Tools deep hollowing boring bar, their straight one. And as you can see, it has a very small cutter on it.
Okay, no, I can't see. I'm going to spotlight you, Ernie, if you can get that into the, how do I do this? Okay, here.
Could I just, while you're spotlighting, John, could I just sort of half answer Alan's question? And that is that everybody seems to make their carbide tips to fit their own tools.
Yes.
And so getting a retrofit for your carbide tool is pretty hard to do. So you're going to have to go after who made the tool in order to find out where to get the extra tips.
I did meet a dealer at the last symposium who specialized in having cutter bits that would fit everybody's tool, different sizes. But you're right, it's like the boring bars. Once you've bought into a system. Ernie's going to hold this up.
Yeah, as you can see, this has a very small cutter on it.
A little closer to your, a little more. The cutter's off screen. Center it. There you go.
There you go.
Now, is that a cup or is that a disc?
That's a disc.
Okay, the one I'm talking about is a cup.
A lot of clearance in it. And the new owners of Easy Tools also own a manufacturing company in Chicago that they make their own inserts, as they do for a lot of other people. But you can see how big the handle is, and it's for deep boring in it. And of course, the strength of a beam is a power of 1 after you reach a threshold width, and a power of 3 in height. So this has a lot of stiffness,
which is what you need to deal with vibration in those situations.
Yeah.
I have is that cutter face parallel with the shaft or parallel with the taper on the end of it?
I'm sorry, say that again.
That tool you just showed, you know, it's tapered on the last like 2.5 inches up on the right behind the cutter. So does the cutter sit on a platform that is parallel to the taper, or is the cutter at 0 degrees when when the tool is level?
It's at 0 degrees. It's parallel to the bottom.
Okay.
And that's where you really want to be. And easy is very specific that this tool needs to be level. And of course, the negative rake scraper still have a dragging burr, but with that negative rake on there, you can get down on that center line and not be rubbing below the center line on the heel of your bevel. And so in internal conventional scrapers in high speed, I think you're better to grind a little more clearance into the edge than you normally do in a scraper as well.
Ernie, I bought the Rikon set. The one thing I don't like about them is they are rounded so that you can't get you have to be fairly far away from the tool rest to get a good solid flat grip. Whereas these tools that you're showing, I like a lot better design wise because they're flat right up to the tip. Rikon was trying to make it so you could flip them at 45 either way and do a shear cut. Well, it never works well for me. And then I end up being so far back from the tool rest to get it flat. Any of you guys have that issue as well?
Well, yeah, if you go to Woodpecker's tools, which is a Cleveland thing, they have 45-degree flats, so you can tip them. They are not 45, they're probably more like 22.5. But the problem is that you're not really getting a shear cut because you don't have a burr. You cannot put a burr on carbide.
Well, no, those cup tools do it though, and I can't find quickly the one I have, or I'd show it. I'm going to give it to Ted Luttrell, who's showing us what he's got. Ted,
I've just done that, Ted.
Well, I listened to you talk about this. I made a couple carbide tools, which are these, and what I used was these. These are the bits. These are the bits that go on planers. And
yes.
I bought them in a box of 10, and I don't have any experience in carbide tools other than the ones I made, so I can't comment. But they seem to work pretty well. I buy the round ones separately, which are made for wood tools in general. And you can also buy this type. So anyways, I just thought I'd share that. I bought the steel on somewhere and just, you grind the ends, drill it, tap it, and you can make your own pretty inexpensively. These boxes are about, I don't know, $10 maybe.
I've done the same thing, Ted, and mine have generally worked, but I'm always looking for something better.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say further about carbide is if you buy really cheap bits, this is true of router bits as well, they're often made with what's called reprocessed carbide, where any big machine tool company is throwing out hundreds of these bits a month, and they sell that back to reprocessors who grind it up, smash it up, and then make it into new carbide. So with reprocessed carbide, you don't get real high control of the cement in cement, the glue that's gluing these stuff together, and you often get bigger chunks in it that'll leave voids in the edge. In a lawsuit I was involved in years ago as an expert witness, we actually cut up router bits and micrographed them and found all kinds of damaged areas in the edges because they were using reprocessed in the counterfeit bit.
So what do you think these planer bits would be made out of? Because they make lots of them, right?
Yeah, don't know. I've got to one of these days put a new set in my my Felder over there, and I think Felder charges a couple of bucks a bit.
I see Gerald holding a tool up over there. I'm going to go to Gerald for a second. You're muted, Gerald. Turn on your mic.
You can see this, but this is a cup.
That's the cup, yeah. The trouble with the cup is they're easy to shatter. I found the two I have, and they both have shattered cups.
One thing that Judy showed me a number of years ago is that this does work better, cut better, if you're making like a shear cut and holding it at an angle as opposed to holding it level. going into the cutter.
The backs of them are typically have a little bit of a round. They're not sharp cornered, so you can rotate them as needed. Yeah.
Yeah, you're actually using those things to ride the bevel. Some of Mike Hunter's profile tools really mimic the use of a bowl gouge because it's slicing with that edge, and they've got it's mounted at an angle, so it really mimics the movement of a bowl gouge.
Yeah, they're very good tools. They do break though.
I believe Hunter's the only one hand bits though. I would really like to try one of those because they look like it's a good idea and they probably do as well.
I see that Ray has put in the chat to look at AZ Carbide for cutters to fit anything in different configurations of cutter and different threads.
Carol, what handle do you have your carbide bits on?
This is I bought offline, eBay, I believe. I have no idea what the name was. It's not a name brand. It's an off brand. The first time I tried to use it, it kept rolling on me. And so I welded a flat to the bottom of it, and that didn't seem to help it. So I ground it off. And so it's sort of a hodgepodge.
It looks like the Rikon. That's the reason I asked.
We're half past the hour, so I'm going to pull the plug on this conversation, interesting as it is, and we will return to it. But we got some other people who have been clamoring to talk about other stuff than tools for a little bit today. If that's okay with everybody?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Jim Bowman, you were on screen. You said you had a little video you wanted to show.
Yeah, and the emphasis is little. It's 11 seconds, so you're gonna have to not sip coffee while I'm showing it to you. But what I was fascinated with, I'm not into turning spheres. I just don't have the time right now. I got a cottage to remodel and a shop I'm trying to get in order. But I remembered while talking to Doug that I think I mentioned it last week. I have these bocce balls because we love to play bocce down here. And I said, I got the balls, all it needs the race. So this week I finally stole an hour or a little bit of time. I want to give credit to Doug because I needed a start point. How far apart should I start the grooves? And Doug gave me some measurements, and here's what I came up with. And now this is a rough cut. I went out to the scrap pile, got a chunk of 2 by 8, I believe it was, and ended up, this race is out of a chunk of fir. It's not finished at all. That's it has 2 1/8 inner core, the inner diameter, and the outer is the max of the 2 by 8, which is 7. To round it off, it's 7 inches. But here's what I'll show it to you. Here's what it is. Don't hold your breath. Here we go.
That's pretty good there, Jim.
All right, good.
Well,
Yes.
well, you know, then here's the crazy thing. I was gonna show my granddaughter, and I brought it in the house from the shop, and overnight that wood dried or shifted, and it wouldn't spin as nicely. I went to put it back on the lathe because I left the cutout in the bottom. I always do that so I can redo it. Well, it had shifted all kinds of ways. And I said, ooh, so I'm starting to work on some real nice spalted maple for finished ones. But I just want to have 2 of those. My friends will look at me nuts and say, what's this deal? But it'll be fun. So it was fun. Just wanted you guys to see it.
With spheres at the front, I know that Doug has got some sphere stuff to show as well. Doug, you want to do it? And when you're on the floor, you can show Charlie Felson as well and whoever else's pictures you got.
There we go. Charlie, is Charlie with us?
Yeah, Charlie's here. If this
Go
is
ahead.
Charlie,
Yeah, I'm here. I'm
Yep.
here. So a couple of weeks ago, somebody else was showing some birdhouses and bird feeders. So I guess as it started getting colder, I thought I'd clean up the shop and use up small odds and end pieces of wood that I had. So I made 2 boxes of these birdhouse ornaments. And so that first picture is really just showing the shapes of them. You know, I tried different shapes, going more for like an oriental look, but here the bottoms and the tops are a little bit different. So I got to play with my detail gouge and stuff. I guess we'll move on. So the top of this one, I kind of undercut. Instead of having it flat across, I tried to give it a little undercut there to give it a, you know, not that you're going to see it in the tree, but it just looked better to me. And then on the perch, instead of it just being like a short dowel, I put a little stopper, I'm going to call it, into, so when it only goes so far into the hole before I glued it, you know. And now I have to find some little birds, you know. I'll go to Hobby Lobby or something to find some little cardinals or something like that. It might be one, yeah. And this is how I put it together. It's a 2-piece, and you know, I use a jam chuck when I'm making it, and I just use Elmer's glue wall glue to put the 2 pieces together.
What are you turning on, Charlie? What's your lathe?
I have a Powermatic.
Big one?
A big one, yes. Yes.
Questions for Charlie?
Right.
I've just mentioned a possibility, Charlie, is you can actually turn those birds. I've got a little video out there out of 2 parts. They're a lot of fun to turn them, and instead of mounting them on the perch, mount them on the roof.
Okay, I'll have to look for that. Thank you. Yes.
That's on Mike Peace's site, which is pretty easy to find. It's mikepeace.com, isn't it, Mike?
Mike Peace Woodturning.
Okay, I'll look for that. Great, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Charlie.
That's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
So, just a little shout out, Bob Boer. I was at his place the other day. For the guys in Lancaster, he's got some. We thought it might be oak, but now I'm looking at it a little bit more closely. I think it might be spalted birch. So anybody in Lancaster area that wants some spalted birch, call Bob. And finally,
on screen right now. So
yeah,
Bob, you want to say anything about this?
Mm-hmm.
Bob Boer, you still there? Yeah, okay.
And this is my project I was doing. Let's see if it runs. It's running. Yeah. It's supposed to be running.
It's running.
What it is I'm working away. This is just the starting point as far as seeing if it worked. But the idea was to get a Newton's cradle using different densities of wood. So the objective here is not to get the wood all the same diameter, but to get them all the exact same weight or mass. I think the reason it doesn't work so well is because of the string as opposed to using a wire or something like that. So but it was, this is my first attempt at making them all the mass. And they go from about 2 3/4 inch diameters. It's poplar, cherry, English walnut, lacewood, and oak. So the poplar is about 2 3/4 inch cherry. The cherry is about, the poplar is about 2 3/4. The lacewood is about 1 2 1/4 inch. So they're about a 1/2 inch diameter difference in all those things.
Now,
so anyway,
calculating the mass or weighing the mass?
I calculated it first and then weighed it.
And so how close
So go ahead.
How close are they in mass?
They're 95 and 96 grams, all of them. I couldn't get, that's as close as my scales will go. I was going to think of getting a scale and see if I could get them closer still, but yeah.
So
by the time you get,
what are you trying to do here?
Newton's cradle, you've seen them with steel balls.
Yeah.
Yes.
Works on the principle of maintaining momentum, and momentum is mass times velocity. So if the mass is the same on all the balls, then they should bounce back and forth like you've seen the classical Newton's cradle. But in this particular case, because the density of the wood is different, the balls have to be a different size.
Don't
So
you
each-
think the wood is elastic enough to, or inelastic enough to absorb some of that momentum and very rapidly quit?
Oh yeah, probably. Sure it is, but that's not the point.
Well, hey Doug, though, if they're different sizes, don't they have different contacts with each other, which means that would mess it up as well?
Not really. No, they're pretty much on a point contact when the sphere versus the sphere. So, but what does mess it up is getting them all, because they're different sizes, they all have to be precisely at the same height for the center line. So your point is, Jim, that lining them up perfectly because they're different diameters isn't exactly an easy task. But go ahead.
Hey, Doug, I made several of these using different materials. And when you're using wood, you'll find you get a much better momentum transfer if you have the grain running horizontal.
That's actually
your grain is vertical. It more easily compresses. The closer you can get to perfect elasticity, the better it'll repeat. Back and forth, back and forth.
I actually put that looks like it's vertical or whatever, Barry, but I actually made it so that the end grain is actually hitting on the end grain of the ball.
Oh, okay. It looked to me like at least the middle ball, like
it's
I was
off
seeing
slightly.
vertical grain.
No, they're all hitting on the end grain. I was very careful to make sure of that so that they get the maximum density going along there.
So play it again, will you?
Hey, Doug, so also the string's going to rotate them to not make them straight on maximum contact either at the right direction.
That's why he's got the two yoke, the string yoke, I think.
Yeah. And that's why, Jim, actually what I'm doing now is I'm actually making up a frame, and I'm going to be using some wire instead of string. Yeah. But to see if next week I can see if it works better, and I can show you the finished version. This was just a starting point, just to see if it works or not.
Well, that's pretty good.
So the string works better than wire.
Well, maybe better string then. Because
don't twist it so much.
I get you.
All I can say, Doug, is I'm squeezing my legs together. It hurts.
Doug, it's also an interesting effect if you hang them so they have about maybe an 1/8 or 1/4 inch gap between them, so that if you pull back one ball, it rapid fire translates all through them and one ball comes off the opposite side. If you pull back two balls come off the opposite side. And that's true all the way up to if you pull back 4 balls, 3 of the ones you pulled back and the remaining 4th one will bounce off it's an interesting momentum effect.
Yeah, well, as I said, I'm going to try and work on getting the hanger so it doesn't bounce as much on the string. So anyway, that's
interesting.
Thank you.
Very good stuff. Thank you, Doug. I'm going to stop your share.
Thank you.
Back to gallery view. You don't have anybody else's picks that came in, Doug, to share?
No, I don't.
Okay. Alan Miller's next. What do you got?
Sure.
Alan?
I just hit share screen. And okay, do you see the bowl?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll start the slideshow.
Make it full screen.
Okay, you got it?
Yep.
Okay, box elder, it's a smaller bowl, 5.5 by 2 inches. And I still have one more. This is some of the stuff I got at the local land compost park, Manham Township Compost Park. This is one, I think this one's oak. It's out of a crotch, 8.5 by 3. And again, I really like the figure in this one.
That's got beautiful color in it.
It does. It does. And the backside now, and I don't know if this is just because it's part of that crotch, but I've got cracks showing up there as it tries to balance itself out.
Alan, what's your finish on that one?
Tung oil, about 4 coats.
Thanks.
That's all reaction wood. You know, the wood has been under tremendous stress when
Right.
it's in the tree. So when all those stresses are relieved, anything can happen. That's what makes it interesting.
Yep.
Ellen, is that straight up tung oil or is that a mix?
That would, what is it? It's Minwax tung oil, so they may have something else in there.
What do they call it? Antique oil?
I think this one's just called tung oil.
Tung.
It's not the antique oil.
Oh, tung oil finish.
Oh,
Yes.
it took the place of Formby's.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then I know I'm about 3 weeks late. This is my entry for the rescue piece. It's a piece of silver maple. I did a hollow form, and a couple different ways it was rescued. The first one being after I had it on the lathe and I was doing some other stuff and came back to it about 4 days later, there was this large crack had appeared. And so I cleaned out the crack, and down toward the bottom there, you can see I put in some another piece of silver maple. So that was the, and then of course you can see some spalting on that one. And it was a piece of log that I knew was pithy. And so how can you clean up a pithy piece? Well, I used a circle cutter, fly cutter, and that's about 2 3/4 inch. I used that to establish the outside edge of the circle, and then used a handheld router to clean out the inside. And then I think that's cherry, a piece of a slab that I got from Roy Johnson. Turned that so it would fit, and put in a plug on this side and on the other side. And here's the other side. And what's especially interesting about this one, you don't necessarily see it when you just hold the piece, but from this picture, it almost looks like you're looking right through the hollow form. And so anyway, some of this kind of falls in the category that just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Alan, you know
Yes,
what?
Jim.
You know what annoys me? You should have lined that line up straight across. You're driving my OCD crazy. You know, it should have lined up. Doug used to pick apart my pieces like that. Jim, you didn't line up the grain.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure there's all sorts of things I could have done differently or better on this piece, but
I think that's a fabulous exercise, Alan, and for anybody to try with a piece that, you know, starts to not work out. Well, go for it.
See what I can do to fix it.
Yeah.
Anyhow, those are my pictures.
Okay. I'm going to end your share.
Thank you.
And go back to the gallery view, I think. Or try. Okay, who else had their arm or up who wanted to show some stuff today? I think Roy Johnson had something. You're going to hold him up by your ear, aren't you, Roy? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to give you the spotlight.
Had some just scraps of pine and laminated them. And this is the kind of bowl that you would see in Norway. Just that indentation here. And it gives, we had in my home, you know, growing up at home, we had one bowl, but it was beautifully painted with the Rosa Maling. And so I've given one of these to an artist here at Garden Spot, just for the fun of seeing what she can do with it. So that was that one. And this morning I put
Roy,
this together.
Roy, go back to that for a second. What would that be used for in your traditional home, in the Norwegian home?
I don't know. I just remember it was at home. Probably could be anything you wanted to use it for.
Well, I mean, once it's got rosemaling on it, is it stable? Is it can you wash it?
Yes, it was. Although the one that I remember at home especially was there, but not really used for anything except a pretty little thing.
Does everybody clear know what how you say it? Rosamalling?
Yeah,
It's floral painting, isn't it? Mostly.
yeah, yeah. So, and this morning I just started to, you can see that there's a little bit more to this whole piece because it's on there, but did this little chalice that's about under 2 3/4 inches in diameter, but it was a pain in the neck just because it was, you know, had so much extension that it wobbled a little bit, but it's pretty. I love doing these things.
Very cool.
When I was early on in learning to turn, it was in the first church that I served. And so on Good Friday, after we'd had the service, that was my tradition, was to go and make a chalice. And I've made many since then.
What do you do with them?
Well, sometimes they are used for, used for church purposes, and sometimes they're just beautiful.
Communion.
Do you give them away? Do you sell them?
Yes. Make them available. Sometimes they're nice gifts to give, like at weddings or different things, or to my family members and things. But I like them.
What finish do you use on them if you're using them, actually using them?
I would use, there's one of the finishes that has some polyurethane, but then some other stuff in it too. And after a month, it's absolutely perfect to use.
It takes a month though, doesn't it, to finish doing whatever it's doing?
That's what Doug Reeser has told me, and he's smarter than me when it comes to that stuff. But,
all right.
Just to make a clarification here, folks, what I've said is that the solvents that are used, the people are concerned about the carcinogens and the nasties in the in your varnishes and stuff, and the solvents that you use that are for drying agents and stuff are actually the nasty parts of it. Once most of that's vaporized off, pretty much any finish is very, very stable in the long run. And the reason it's stable, the reason it's it is less nasty is because it is stable. It doesn't come apart. So if people are worried about food safe, as far as I'm concerned, you need to make sure that all the solvent and everything has been well dried off before you use anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to take a legal stand on it, but you know what I'm saying. You understand?
And the second thing, Doug, you should add to that, a lot of products that we consider food safe, depending on the company you get it from, has had hardeners and curing agents added, which makes them technically unsafe, tongue oil being one of them.
Yes.
But John, to answer your question, at church, our pastor asked if I would make 5 sets of plates and chalices that could be used for communion, and he wanted the same species for all of them, and I happened to have some catalpa wood that I'd gotten up at a time that we were staying up on Lake George, and beautifully wooded, great to work with, and used about once a year for communion. They'll bring those out to use them rather than other forms of communion. And that was basically that was my gift.
Very nice. That is a great gift. Is there if you're doing a communion set, is there some particular size for the plate?
I would try to go, about at least 10 inches.
So it's a large plate in your practice.
8 to 12, 10 to 12 inches.
I've made several of those, and I think it's a function in your church of what kind of element are you using. Are you using wafers, or are you using unleavened flatbread? And it varies. But if you go do a search and go to a store or a website that sells those kind of products in metal, you can get a feel for what the traditional sizes and shapes are.
And, you know, Alan can confirm for me that basically most of the time it's just cut bread, regular bread that was cut in chunks.
Well, the whole question of finishing on food stuff, you know, in the old days before there was pottery and metal dishes, everybody ate off of wood, and it was either unfinished or finished with beeswax. And I've read some research that says unfinished maple, just for example, has pretty good antibiotic properties, but I don't know the truth of that. Some of you guys may know more about it than I do. Ernie, you probably do, and Mike too.
Yeah, the Forest Products Lab actually ran a bunch of tests years ago when it became a law in a lot of states that you had to use plastic cutting boards in food surface. And they found out that initially that was true, but as you cut into the plastic, it actually retained microbes that harmed you, and the wood somehow killed them. And it really, I don't think it was even species specific, but that wood cutting boards were actually safer.
Yeah, that's why we didn't all die out in the Middle Ages.
One of the hypotheses of the Dark Ages is the reason that people thought tomatoes were poisonous is because people used to cut tomatoes on the same cutting board as they did for chicken and raw chicken and uncooked chicken, and that the salmonella from the chicken was being picked up by the tomatoes and actually killing people. So, which is to the point, which is what Ernie said, it's the cutting up of the board and the food that gets caught in the middle of it. So every once in a while I take my wife's cutting board out to the shop and just run it through the sander just to get rid of some of that stuff for safety reasons.
Do you sharpen your knives also, Doug?
You bet. You bet.
And on that note, kids, it's 11 o'clock, and this brings to a conclusion another Lancaster Woodturners Coffee Hour. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you much.
A lot, Jim.
Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
If you want to show
That was
pictures,
wonderful. Thanks.
If you want to show pictures, you can send them to me or to Doug, or you can show them yourself if you can figure out how to screen share. We have been promising a screen share workshop, but I haven't got that together yet, but it'll come around. Thank you all. See you next week.